Good afternoon and welcome to All Things Manchester, the public access show focused on Central and Eastern Connecticut. My name is Tom Topping. I'll be your host tonight. Our Cox engineer is Dave Smith. In the studio tonight, I've got Rich Hamilton and Rich Mitchell along with Joe Orlando. My guest tonight is Assistant Town Manager Joel Cox. Joel, thank you very much for your time tonight. We appreciate you coming in. The first thing I'd like to ask you to do is introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us who you are and how you got involved with the town of Manchester, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I'm Joel Cox. I'm Assistant Town Manager and Director of Human Services for the town. I've been with Manchester since 2019, right before the pandemic. I live out in Enfield along with my daughter and dog. And I've got a long career in human services. I was previously the Vice President of Operations for a large nonprofit up in Springfield, Mass. And before that, I worked for the town of Enfield as their Assistant Director of Social Services. And before that, I worked for the state as a social worker for DCF. So human services has been in my blood since my very first job. And I'm happy to call Manchester home.
And we're glad to have you. I've worked with you several times in several ways. For residents who may not know the full scope of human services, can you explain what departments you cover and how it supports the people in our community?
Sure. So Human Services in Manchester has three main divisions. That's the Manchester Senior Center, Senior Adult and Family Services, which is the main social work division of Human Services, and the Health Department. And so we provide, as a department, we provide a wide range of services for everyone from birth until their older years. Obviously, our health department keeps this community safe through restaurant inspections and other environmental health activities, educated through community health activities. Our senior center provides a whole range of social and educational and recreational opportunities for older Manchester residents, anyone over the age of 60. And then Senior Adult and Family Services, again, as our main social work division, provides all sorts of basic needs assistance, information and referral, and far too many things for me to list in one night, but a lot of great supports. And then also, Human Services has myself and a admin in Human Services Administration, and we provide overall management of the Human Services Department, as well as administering several programs and funding to 16 nonprofit agencies in the town.
Wow. Well, let me expand a little bit on that, if you don't mind. What needs are you seeing now, particular needs, most often in terms of families, seniors, and individuals that you're finding a priority?
And this isn't unique to Manchester, but what we see a lot of are housing and food insecurity. Housing costs are continuing to rise, and a lot of working families are struggling to keep up with those housing costs. As we all know, the price of bread and milk, along with the price of everyone's utilities and rents, just continues to go up and up and up. And so we've got working families who are just struggling to make ends meet. And that's also, experienced by some of our older residents as well. And then the other big thing that we see a lot of in town, and I think a lot of anyone who drives through town has seen an uptick in the numbers of unhoused individuals in our community. Homelessness, those numbers continue to rise year over year. And we do a very good job in Manchester of providing support to anyone and everyone in need, but we are seeing more numbers of folks who are struggling to keep a roof over their heads in our community.
You do yeoman's work. Let me just be clear about that. I think Manchester does a fantastic job of outreach. Quite often you work, I won't say out of sight, but behind the scenes. First of all, there's a high level of confidentiality with what you do. But what's something the public might be surprised to learn that your team deals with on a regular basis?
Well, I think there's a lot. When we do Government Academy, Human Services is never as flashy as the police department or the fire department. But people are always surprised to know about the depth of things that we do, or the full spectrum. from our health department that has to inspect every public swimming pool in this town, every restaurant, to responding to concerns from residents if they have a neighbor who appears to be in distress or maybe has some hoarding and clutter issues, to the programs like energy assistance and tax assistance, which facilitates roughly $2.2 million in benefits to Manchester residents every year through our offices. It's an amazing array of things that Human Services accomplishes, and we have a very small budget and by most standards a small staff, but we accomplish a lot year over year.
Well, you bring up an interesting fact, because we talked about this before we started. Manchester's a growing suburb.
Yeah.
How does that affect what you're doing going forward? I mean,
well, the reality is that Manchester has always been as an organization. It's always been an organization that wants to support the community and serve the community, and the Manchester community, as you noted, continues to grow. So, the demands on our services continues to go up year over year as more people move into town, more people come in with various needs. We find that the complexity of people's needs is certainly increasing, whereas before someone may come into the senior center and want assistance with Medicare counseling. Now that conversation is also a conversation about Medicare counseling, about their housing needs. Maybe they have an adult child who now has returned home and has their own host of personal needs. So the complexity of what we're seeing in the community continues to rise, and so it really it keeps us busy.
well, that's something we talked about before the show. I myself took part in your Medicaid planning because that's a maze, okay? Starting about 6 months before you turn 65, the mailman drops off a stack like this on your front step every day, and you're expected to work your way through that. Would you mind getting into that a little bit, and how your department?
Sure. Our social workers, we actually have 2 social workers who are dedicated to the senior center itself, but all of our social workers, or most of our social workers, are what is known as Choices trained. So Choices is the Medicare counseling program that we have in the state, and so all of our workers get trained to be able to provide guidance to folks who are going through that same situation you went through. It's a very complex web of options when you get to your Medicare age, and navigating it can just seem overwhelming and daunting. So what we do is try to provide, we don't steer people towards any particular plan or any particular company for their benefits. We just help people understand what their benefits are so that they can maximize what's available to them and keep as much money in their pocket as they can.
And it was not a quick, easy process for me either.
No.
It involved several hours, several meetings over several hours.
Yes.
But in the end, I feel like I got a great program, and I'm very comfortable with what I got, and I'm very appreciative of that.
Good. I'm happy we could help.
And you did help. Let's talk about the rising costs of everything. You have a finite amount. This is not a good budget year.
No.
And I don't mean to laugh. That's an understatement. What do you see as the future? Let me ask the question this way: how can I, as Tom Topping, help you? How can the public? You do a lot of outreach, Joel.
Right. I think the best ways that anyone can help, honestly, is just to be good friends and neighbors to others in the community. The Human Services budget is a little over $3.5 million, which is, just a little bit over 1%, 1.5% of the town's overall budget. So I'll never have enough money in my budget to meet the needs of every person in this community. So the best thing that people can do is just be good to each other, honestly. And I know it sounds a little hokey, but it's true. Look out for the people around you. And then when for you. It's always been very, very helpful when I'm able to share information with you and you get it out through your various channels and just get the information out there. So just keep sharing all the information about the programs and the assistance programs that are out there. And then also just be engaged. You know, I don't see as many people as I'd like to see at our board of directors meetings and talking about local issues. So it's always good when community members come out and actually speak about the things that concern them so that the town is better equipped to prioritize what resources we do have.
Okay, that's good to know. You also partner with community organizations, nonprofits, Michelle Puzo, those kind of folks. What kind of programs do you run with them, if you don't mind me asking?
So in the human services budget, as I mentioned, we provide funding to several organizations, several nonprofits in town. They provide a wide range of things from home care to mental health services for children, to crisis counseling, to homeless outreach and support. So we directly provide some funding to those agencies. But in my role as Director of Human Services, my other charge under the charter is to help coordinate and facilitate all human services in town. So I will work with our partners to make sure that their information is getting out there, that if they are struggling with something in terms of an operational need or some other deficit in their program, to try to help them find resources, try to make sure that the right agencies are connecting with each other, try to make sure that the right people are coming to the table to have conversations about what their needs are in this community, and getting the right nonprofits and other human services providers around those tables to be with those people. So what I do is a fair amount of coordinating, communicating.
Joel, when someone is struggling, I'm a single guy, but I'll use me as an example. If I were to find myself suddenly without a job and no savings and in trouble, on the cusp of serious trouble, it's hard to know where to start, where to find help. What advice would you give to an adult who's on that cusp right now, whether they're single or have a family? Where's the first place that they should go to start the road back?
Certainly. I always advise people to reach out to the human services, specifically to senior adult and family services. We have a lot of very well-trained social workers. And actually, that was a little bit of a overstatement. We don't have a lot of social workers, but we have plenty of well-trained social workers who are ready to assist people navigate what the options are out there. Again, we may not always have the direct resources, but if we have a program that we can use to help resolve whatever the crisis is, we'll certainly connect a person with that. Or we try to connect people, obviously, with the very vast array of programs and supports that are in the community. So navigating it, just like with the Medicare, it's really, when you're in crisis, navigating those things can be very, very overwhelming and very daunting. When you're worried about keeping a roof over your head, you know, it's hard to figure out who to turn to. So that's what our social workers are there for. They'll help people identify what resources are available. And if it's a little daunting to come in and speak with someone in person, this great option is always 211,
Okay.
you know, which is a statewide resource that is run by the United Way. It has a comprehensive listing of resources that people can call and access at any time.
Well, that's kind of a nice segue. My next question was about your case managers and social workers, but you kind of took that one off the table. Human Services deals with sensitive situations all the time. How does your department protect the dignity and privacy of the people that it serves?
Well, all social workers operate by standards and ethics which dictate that any person who comes in, their personal information remains private and secure at all times. We try to treat every person that comes in with compassion and dignity, so that whatever your circumstances are, you're always a human in our eyes and someone who's worthy of support. So we try to protect not only their personal information, but also their dignity to make sure they feel cared for when they're in our offices. We don't disclose information to any outside source unless the person gives us permission to do so, or we need to help them access a program or resource.
Well, like going back to my situation with the Medicare stuff, I felt overwhelmed and actually a little embarrassed to say, I need help with this.
Right.
And your staff, whom I knew already, most of them, was very empathetic, and I appreciated that. Let's talk about the programs and initiatives that you're most proud of.
I think one of so there's two that stick out for me right now. I think about 2020, we worked with MAC Charities and other local nonprofits to start our Winter Warming Center, which is a program that provides housing and shelter for people who otherwise lack housing from December through March. We've run that program continuously since that time and have been able to keep a lot of very fragile people out of the winter and out of the outdoors during the coldest times of the year. And so I've been very, very proud of that work. I think a lot of what Manchester has done over the last few years has been a standout in regards to how we tried to support and address issues of housing and homelessness in our community. I don't think you'll find that in many other towns, and it's something I always brag about, and something that we get a lot of accolades for, because I think this is a community that really does show up for people in need. And again, we can't solve every problem, but we try our best. And the other thing that I think I'm really excited about, we started a program in the health department called the It Takes a Village program, which is a very robust maternal health program that is hoping to provide services to 100 local families and connect them with all manner of supports for that very critical early phase of a life and of a family. So those two programs are things I've been very, very proud of.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. And as we look ahead, what challenges do you see coming for human services, and how is the town preparing to handle them?
Well, I think I may have mentioned housing being a challenge, and I think that's going to continue to present itself as a major challenge for this community and for the department. And what we are doing right now, I am in some talks with several local partners to continue to look at the future of our services to homeless and our sheltering and winter warming efforts, and really trying to come up with a very robust response plan to those issues. And then, again, I think as we move forward on understanding the budget limitations, the financial hardships that our nonprofits and the people who need support from our nonprofits are facing, just doing what I can and what the department can to, again, to coordinate those supports and resources to make sure that the right resources are in this community, that they're leveraged in a way that is most beneficial to the people of this community, and just trying to bring as much support into this town as I can.
One thing that you and I both keep mentioning is the people of Manchester and their generous spirit. If someone was interested in supporting a program, whether it's donating their time, resources, or just supporting it in any other way, how would a member of the community get involved in some of your programs?
They can always reach out to the office and just say, hey, I'm in this particular situation, here's who I am, and I'd love to connect with an organization to volunteer at, and we'll try to point them in the right direction. There is another program that a lot of people don't know about, such as our Senior Volunteer Tax Credit Program, which connects older residents with volunteer opportunities in town, and if they put in 50 hours over the course of the year, they get a tax credit, a property tax credit. So we love connecting people with volunteer opportunities. So I would just encourage folks, they can reach out to me directly. They can call the main human services number. They can call Senior and Family Services or the Senior Center, and we'll always try to connect people with good opportunities.
Okay. That's another thing I was going to talk to you about was the senior tax program, but we think great minds think alike. Let's see. How does Human Services work with other town departments to make things happen?
Well, having come from another municipality, I can say that this town, our departments all work really well together. So the senior center is the primary emergency shelter function for the town. Senior Adult and Family Services is our primary division that handles relocation if we have a fire or a major displacement. So we are always working with other town departments, whether it's emergency management, public works, fire, EMS. Our staff are the ones who are responding to if EMS or police or fire are on a scene and they are noticing conditions or other things that would warrant some sort of social work support, some basic needs support. We get those referrals from the PD. And so we have very good relationships with all our other town departments because we rely on them for what we need and they rely on us to be responsive and pitch in when they need us to be there. And all town departments really respond in the same way. It's a great town to work for.
I believe that. You don't have to sell me. I know you believe that too. What trends do you see in mental health right now, and how is the town responding to the needs of the community in terms of their mental health?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, I think it's just the complexity. I think there are more and more people struggling with complex mental health needs, and quite frankly, just not enough resources to meet all the needs. And that is not because the town isn't responsive. That's not because the nonprofits out there and the mental health providers out there who want to provide the services. I think there's just an abundance of people in need. Quite frankly, we lack a sufficient amount of funding across the board to support those needs. Again, I think Manchester is a very resource-rich environment. We've got a lot of great partners out there doing mental health work, but with anything else, it's sometimes difficult to keep up with the demand.
And it's kind of hurtful too, because they're some of our most vulnerable people.
Right.
I was over at Mark last week, and we're going to be working with them trying to build some of their programs. And really, they're very humble. They don't ask for much, and it does sort of, when you put your hands on it, it's very moving stuff. I appreciate what you're doing. I like you. We've known each other a while, and I know that you put your heart into it. So does your team, by the way. I've never had a problem with anybody that works with your team. They're always very helpful and very enthusiastic about programs that we might want to get behind. A couple other things I'd like to touch on before we go. It is kind of getting towards the end of our show. Transportation, childcare, and housing are major barriers for many people. How does the town approach these issues from a human services perspective?
So transportation is one. So we offer the Dial-A-Ride program through Senior Adult and Family Services, which offers a transportation to older adults and folks with disabilities. So we do provide that service. Childcare and housing are very difficult. So again, the way Human Services really impacts childcare and housing is by supporting the agencies that provide those services in town. Up until recently, Human Services was the fiduciary for a very large state contract which provided childcare. So we help administer some of the childcare programming in town. The state has changed that a little bit, but we're still very much connected with our childcare providers, ensuring that they have their needs met, that their organizations are operating well and connected. And I show up and participate in several early education, early childhood, child care environments to, lend whatever resources and support I can to those organizations. And housing, again, we just try to advocate for the resources that people need to remain stably housed. We do try to offer some level of direct financial assistance when we have access to funding. And we, again, just try to make sure that we are coordinating the resources and supports and guiding people who are struggling with any of those needs to the right agencies.
If you were able to point to one particular frustration or one area of understanding that the community seems to not be grasping, maybe in its entirety. Is there one thing that you would like to say to the community about what your role or anything like that?
No, I think one thing I've heard, when I do that thing where you read the comments on Facebook when maybe you shouldn't, is just a question about why the town isn't doing more for, when they see a lot of unhoused and homeless people in the community. Why isn't the town doing more? And I just want to assure people that the town is doing an exceptional job of trying to provide support to those people. We provide more resources, support, and assistance to homeless folks in our community, again, than I think you're going to find in just about any of our neighboring towns. And so there's a lot with most human service needs that goes on in the background that's not always visible. So even if you see someone in need, it's not because we're not trying. We are trying very hard to make sure that everyone has access to the supports they need. So a lot of what we do is never flashy, it's never in your face, but we are always in the background working. And I just want to assure people that we always are trying to figure out what's the next best thing for this community is.
And you can't force people. If I want to live on the street, you can't force me into an apartment, right? I mean,
No, there's nothing there's no law that says you don't have the freedom of choice. Sometimes people make bad decisions, and it is their right to make a bad decision.
Yeah, yeah. Have you got any upcoming initiatives, programs, or improvements that you're particularly excited about going forward?
There's honestly nothing that jumps out. We have a lot going on. As people know, we are looking at the future of our senior center and what that might hold. So however that turns out, I'm excited that the conversation's going on, excited that people are engaged and want the best for our older residents. We've got, as I said, housing initiatives and other conversations that are going on. I'm excited about everything the Human Services Department does. So there's not one particular thing, but we're constantly evolving and constantly looking at better ways to serve the community. So I find that in and of itself to be very exciting.
I've always enjoyed my discussions with you and your staff. It seems like we do get a lot accomplished in this community. And I think that's something that we cumulatively should be proud of and should really hang our hat on. I'd like to invite you back anytime you want. We're out of time now. And you provided a lot of great information to us tonight, and I'm very grateful to you. I'd like to thank you and make sure you know you're welcome here anytime.
Happy to come back whenever you'd like.
Thanks, sir. I'd like to thank you most of all for watching our show this week. We air at Channel 15 on Thursday mornings at 11, and then again Thursday evenings at 6:30. My name is Tom Topping. I'm the host of All Things Manchester. I'd like to thank my coworkers Dave, Joe, Rich, and Rich for making this show the magic that it is. We will see you next week. Have a great week, everyone. Thank you.